Hello, everybody. It's the Gary Neville podcast from a stormy Emirates Stadium, or it certainly has been through the evening tonight. And we have watched together, Gary, a goalless draw between Arsenal and Liverpool, which I guess for sort of cerebral football fans, intellectuals who love the ins and outs of the tactical game, had actually quite a lot in it, even if it wasn't a thriller-minute game.
Yeah, I've become more tired of 0-0 games as sort of I get older and I come to football matches and I start to think about the kid that's come for the first time and, you know, dreams of seeing his team score goals or even the disappointment of conceding goals. But yeah, there was a lot about that game to admire, particularly from a Liverpool perspective. If you break it down into the segments of the match, I think before the game you thought Liverpool might struggle. I actually thought Gakpo would have played central and Wirtz to the left, but he didn't. Gakpo played to the left and Wirtz played more central. And it just meant that Liverpool really had no punch up front. And that was the thing that in the end meant that Liverpool didn't go on and win the game because they were the better team in the second half. But in that first 20 minutes, I thought Arsenal were really sharp. And just in this last couple of hours, obviously since last night? It feels like about 3 months ago that City drew against Brighton. Yeah, it was last night, wasn't it? It just felt like there's a building today of sort of atmosphere, of feeling that this is it, Arsenal 8 points clear, the day that they really cement their title charge and they don't just become favourites for the league, but they almost in some way start to think, we're going to do it. And maybe that's just been in the players' heads a little bit all day, but they started really well in the first 20 minutes, really sharp play, you know, got in behind Liverpool a couple of times, didn't really create any big chances. I don't think really got in the right positions when balls sometimes were going across the box. I think Gyökeres, maybe we'll have a discussion about him because I thought he was really poor tonight. He played 60 odd minutes in the game. Just thought, come on, be more of a battering ram, be more of a thing. But yeah, first 20 minutes Arsenal I thought were really good. I thought Liverpool's back line looked like it was strewn across the back. You couldn't even tell who the back four were. There were like six in there at times. And then the midfield, normally you see a line of 4 and a 2 or a 5 and a 1 or a 3 and a 3. There wasn't. It was just like they were everywhere, but they were man marking, they were packing the midfield and keeping it quite narrow. And by hook or by crook, they kept Arsenal out. And then all of a sudden there was a point, I think it was like 23 minutes in the game, where Liverpool had a little bit of possession for probably about a minute and a half, and they then got, I think, that Conor Bradley chance from it, didn't they? And that's when the game just swung a little bit and the Arsenal fans just started to quieten down, and it never really got going again for Arsenal in the first half after that, and it went sort of petered away to half time and Liverpool grew in the game. The big transformation for me is what's happened from both dressing rooms at the end at half time, because I thought Arsenal would come out again. And Liverpool were just really, really good in the second half. It was a good performance, that. That wasn't just a good defensive performance in the second half. They actually kept the ball. They were authoritative. And the only thing they lacked was the goal, which, to be fair, I said at the end of the game, you're missing Salah, you're missing Ekitike, you're missing Isak. You've got your three main players who have got real firepower. I mean, you're talking about 3 15, 20 goal a season, in Salah's case, sometimes a lot more goals a season strikers there. So, yeah, that's where Liverpool lacked some punch, some sort of ruthlessness. But it was a really good night, that, for Liverpool, other than the Conor Bradley injury at the end, which maybe we'll talk about as well, for different reasons, not just the fact that the kid's injured, and it's a bad one for him, but the way in which Martinelli handled it. But Liverpool, I think Arne Slot will come out and give a very, very proud interview of how his team have played against the best team in the country right now. They've dug in, they've got through that first 20-25 minutes. It was an old school away performance that tonight that just lacked that counter-attack goal that would have made it a perfect away performance.
And perhaps if they had Ekitike or they had Salah or they had Isak, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
And it makes me reflect, because you remark on your disappointment with Gyökeres tonight, in the light of that big broad smile we saw from Benjamin Sesko with Manchester United at Burnley last night, a centre forward suddenly finding himself and coming to life. In the context of all that, the relevance and the sort of broader role of the centre forward at a particularly at a big time club.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've become used to at times centre forwards not getting involved in the game as much and not contributing as much in general play, but what they have to be is in the right position in the box. They have to be making those runs across the goalkeeper, across the near post. They have to make sure that they're charging in and sliding in the 6-yard box when that ball fires across. And he didn't do that bit. That's the bit that I'm disappointed with him in. Yeah, if you're not doing that, you've got to then do the other bit, which is the ugly bit of going pressing and harassing and holding the ball up. But yeah, I don't think he contributed anything really to the game tonight as a centre forward for Arsenal, Gyökeres. And look, Arsenal have had 7 players out on that pitch tonight who have not been able to unlock that Liverpool defence, and that's credit to Liverpool's defence. But I would have expected at some point in the game, Trossard, Gyökeres, Saka, Ødegaard, Eze, Madueke, Martinelli, such an unbelievable firepower, such incredible firepower within a sort of front part of the team. I would have expected one of them just to produce that little bit of magic. They had a lot more options than Liverpool up front. But in the second half, Liverpool just managed the game brilliantly on the ball, and then the bits that Arsenal had, to be fair, weren't really that big. The best chance that team was Gabriel's at the end, the header, which I think that was for him. You just expect him to do better. So, yeah, a challenging night for Arsenal. Maybe the expectation, the tension of what's expected of them today with them, coming here. I just thought it was a big game today for Arsenal. My feeling was 8 points clear, go and grab this title by the scruff of the neck. And they're still in a great position, but they just didn't quite put a performance together. But massive credit to Liverpool because they dug in. Yeah. God, they dug in tonight, I have to say. They dug in more than I thought they were capable of. I thought that resilience and that sort of what would be that ability to see out a game 0-0 and sort of keep a clean sheet. Even with 20 minutes to go, I just thought Arsenal are going to go and get one here. And it's be a set piece, or it'll be a moment of magic from someone, or a little deflected goal, and Liverpool will lose 1-0. And it'll be a disappointment. I think they'll go back tonight to Liverpool really proud, those players. And, they'll be not celebrating because they've not won a game, and some of them have won titles and won hundreds of games. But I think they'll feel like that was important what we did out there. And I think it was important for their season. They've obviously not been in amazing form, but they've actually had a decent run of results. I think that's the result tonight that they will be probably most pleased with amongst the others, because it's a significant thing to play against this Arsenal team here and do what they did.
Yeah, and you wanted to reflect too on Conor Bradley. We don't, obviously, as we speak, we don't know how bad the injury is. It didn't look very nice, I have to say. That's really unfortunate because he was, in a way, he personified that digging in.
He did, and Gyökeres, who I've been critical of during this season for his way in which he settled into the Liverpool team, I thought he really stuck at it and was competitive and really sort of getting at Saka and sort of, really aggressive in his defending, lower and a bit more fierce. So I thought he did well too. And Conor Bradley, I just think he's so graceful. When he moves forward with the ball, he travels with it with such smoothness and, it looks fantastic. And his defensive work's pretty good as well. And he had a good night as well, Conor Bradley, until that last part where you just feel like he needs that run of a season or 2 seasons, 3 seasons of reliable, good 7 and 8 out of 10 performances as a right back to establish himself beyond Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was a sensational football player for Liverpool. And tonight it just looked like a bad one, and then I think you summed it up perfectly. I was a little bit emotional in terms of, I think I called actually Martinelli an idiot, which maybe I shouldn't have done, but it was idiotic what he did. It was poor. You said it in a lot better than I did, and a lot more graceful than I did, which is not unusual, which was to read the room. He didn't read the room, Martin. It was really poor. It was almost disappointing to actually, we all disappoint ourselves. We all let ourselves down on a football pitch and get carried away in moments. But that'll be one that I think Martinelli, after, I think he'll head off into that changing room. I think he'll go and see Conor Bradley and say, I'm really sorry, I should not have done that. You'll feel really after that, I think, if you've done that against a player who's been injured. So, yeah, he didn't read the room. It was a poor reaction. And maybe there's a little bit of sympathy in the sense that he probably thought Conor Bradley was trying to edge back on the pitch. I think he actually did a little bit, didn't he, even though he was injured. But, he threw the ball at him to start with, and then he sort of pushes him off the pitch. And I'm surprised the Liverpool player didn't go over and really grab him by the scruff of the neck. I'm looking at actually Roy Keane in my picture here. If that had have happened to one of our players, I think he'd have been in full force.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I guess that didn't happen, and peace broke out again. I know you were at Burnley last night, so I don't know how much of last night's football you've been able to see and digest, but obviously before Arsenal dropped points, Manchester City had dropped points, and as far as I understand it, their big dynamic at the moment is that, Diaz is injured, Guardiola is injured. We saw them get injured in the game at Chelsea at the weekend, which I suppose creates a new vulnerability for them.
Yeah, we saw it in front of our eyes, didn't we, against Chelsea? That you sort of see Diaz and Guardiola go off, and it gives you encouragement because the players that are coming on and that back four doesn't look stable. And it's not. And last night, it's not a game that I imagine millions of people will have watched. The Brighton versus Manchester City game, but a little bit of a silent killer for them, in the sense that you felt as though, the Sunderland one, you can probably understand it. Chelsea was a bad one for them, conceding in the last minute, and you could see the disappointment, couldn't you, in the crowd and on the face of the players and Pep Guardiola at the end of that one. But to then drop points at home against Brighton when, they're already sort of dropping points, they're already sort of drifting away from, or Arsenal are sort of drifting away from them. That would have been a real gut-wrencher, and it just leaves City in a position right now where they really do have to think about how they hang in there for March, April, because there's no doubt that you get to March, April and you are 4 or 5 points off Arsenal, there will be real pressure applied by us, by everybody, by the situation, by the Premier League title looming. So they've got to try and hang in there and not be out of it. I don't think they will be, but they're going to have to do something defensive, whether it's in the transfer market or get players back quickly, because the more they play with that back four, the more they're going to drop points.
A word on Chelsea. Obviously, again, we saw them at the weekend. Tumultuous week. They had their new coach watching them at Fulham last night and had Cucurella sent off, and it appears to have cost them the points. Where are you with their sort of ongoing melodrama?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's an interesting one. Liam Rossini coming in, and really interesting appointment from a point of view of, we know where it's come from, obviously from the multi-club model, but a real surprise, I think, to many. If you just said 3 or 4 months ago that Liam Rossini would be manager of Chelsea, it came out of nowhere. Obviously, Maresca's gone, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next few months, because it's a tough football club, that one. I mean, look, the big clubs are tough if it's not going well. If results aren't right, then there is a lot of scrutiny and pressure comes on managers and on players, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in this next few weeks. They need a couple of good results in January.
This is going to be a shorter one because you have to be in our studio in a second, but I wanted to end on this, and I hope this is okay because we haven't planned it, but the Newcastle 4-3 last night, the reports I've read of it were very much in the context of the very sad news about Kevin Keegan's illness. That was a Kevin Keegan 4-3 win, wasn't it? Which I thought was a really beautiful thing, and Eddie Howe expressed himself very well on that topic, and I know, of course, he was your international manager, and you might have a word or two to say about that.
Yeah, he was a great man, Kevin Keegan, and I always remember thinking of sort of the qualities of Kevin when he was the England manager, about his honesty, his integrity, his enthusiasm every single day on the training pitch, about how he wanted players to enjoy themselves and get the very best out of themselves and go forward and play with excitement and thrill. And then you just think the Glenn Hoddle sort of had the really good tactical mind, and if you could combine the two of them, I remember at the time thinking you had almost like the perfect manager. But Kevin Keegan was a great man manager. He made players happy, he made players excited, he made players sort of enthused on the training pitch to think that go and play in football. Almost like you felt like he was still the kid that played like in the the playground as a 7-8-year-old. It never left him, you know what I mean? He always wanted to join in and sort of be part of the training session with the lads and be with the boys, if you like, and that's how he was as a manager. And that's how his teams played at Newcastle. I mean, they were exciting, so exciting. We had some right battles with them and great games. I know that Liverpool game obviously is famous, the Liverpool games that they've had, the 4-3s, 4-4s, but we had some fantastic battles against them as well. So I wish him all the best. Eddie Howe, look, there's still something about Newcastle, not having the greatest of seasons, but I've still got a lot of love for Newcastle in terms of just what they are. I think they're a good side. I like watching them play, and I wouldn't rule out them going on a run, because there are a lot of teams trying to find their feet still. There are a lot of teams well below the standard, well below par, not hitting anything like their straps that they should be. And Newcastle have got a lot of quality. They just need to make sure they keep that best 11 on the pitch and see what happens.
Yeah, actually, the middle of the table, Gary, since you mentioned it, from Brentford in 5th to Bournemouth in 15th, is covered by 7 points. So
Yeah.
that race for potentially even Champions League, but certainly Europe is great.
It's up there for grabs. I mean, you watch United last night, they've had, I think, 6 opportunities, it feels like, in the last sort of like 3 weeks to go into the top 4, top 5. I mean, they've missed every single opportunity to do it, but that's how scruffy this league is right now. I mean, it's as if you can sort of drop points, draw games, lose a game, and still not be really out of sort of contention for where you want to be. It's like almost like everyone's stuck in the mud. It's incredible, really. Yeah, it's everyone's in the same boat, it feels like, apart from a couple of teams who are doing well.
Okay, and finally then, Gary, Manchester United, you saw them at Turf Moor last night, which was in itself a really entertaining game. As a United person, would you come out of that feeling better about yourself or not?
I don't know. I mean, look, I think you said partway through tonight that it's 50 games. It's the end of a monstrous run of Christmas fixtures in 19 days. And it's been a tiring 19 days as a Manchester United fan. I know that obviously I'm not going to name some of the games now that are within that period because some of them started before, but it just feels like when I reflected today, this morning, coming down here, and I've done, I think, 6 or 7 of United's last 9 matches, and 2 or 3 of the games I really like, but when you think they played Everton with 10 men, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, Bournemouth, and one more,
West
Ham. A lot of those teams are losing, apart from Leeds, a lot of those teams are losing a lot of football matches and playing really poorly, and are at this moment, the inferior teams in the Premier League. I think Manchester United have picked up 5 points out of 18 possible points against those teams. And West Ham, Wolves, Burnley, Bournemouth have been losing a lot of matches to every other team. It's been such a missed opportunity, and the loss of a manager during that period. And I remember stood on the touchline before the Everton game, which was the first in that run. I know that obviously Crystal Palace, Newcastle and Villa have been in there as well. So there's been 9 games. The other 6 that I've mentioned are the ones that I would have expected Manchester United to get a lot of points in. And I remember looking at the fixture list and thinking, Manchester United could be going into the new year. I fancy them to be in the top 3 or 4. If they can pick up 12 points, 14 points out of those 18, they'll be right up there, because the other teams are not doing well. They're struggling. They've got tougher runs. They're not in good form. And yeah, I just feel really disappointed just generally about the whole of that period. And obviously, they say a manager loses his job, it's the worst thing that can happen in a football club, because the reality of it is, then there's a failure across the board. Everyone's got to take responsibility for it. So yeah, I don't feel great about last night, in the sense that ultimately I just look at it as the end of a period of games, and what's happened to Ruben Amorim. And look, last night I think United deserved to win. I think they were the better team, but you'd expect that. They were playing against Burnley, who haven't won a game and can't win a game hardly. And I thought it was a good night for Sesko. I thought in the first half that he got into some good positions in between centre forwards, but in between centre backs, and it didn't quite happen for him, and he was a bit frustrated on the ball. I thought the ball kept bouncing off him when it was played into him, but he had 2 magnificent finishes, and he needed that. He really did need that, and he had a big smile on his face. And look, I've never played centre forward for Manchester United, but I do know that I've seen centre forwards come to the club and not score for a period, and now that really weighs on the mind, and it sort of, because the pressure on them and the price tag, and he's young. So let's hope from here on in that he can really just hit a run of games where he can score some goals. Bruno Fernandes coming back, I think, was really important. Him going off, I think that was probably decided before the game that he could only do 60 minutes, but the game did swing a little bit after that. Yeah, a couple of disappointing goals to give away. They need Maguire and De Ligt back, and see whether that really can provide some sort of solidity at the back. Need obviously Mbeumo and Ahmad back as well. So there's players to come back. It's not all doom and gloom, but just a really disappointing, tiring period that ends with them in with a chance of qualifying for the Champions League this season if they can put a run together. But they've got an FA Cup game, and then I think they've got Manchester City and then Arsenal. Yeah. So 2 tough games coming up, which, but they beat Newcastle, did well against Villa, won at Crystal Palace away, and then the 6 games that I've mentioned there, the ones that they've let themselves down in. So crazy, really.
And since we're coming to Cup weekend, I mean, especially since they don't have Europe, a tasty cup run could light a bit of a fire on the Manchester United season, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you can win a trophy in a season where you're not doing brilliantly well, or you're in a transition and you're not going to win the league, which they're quite clearly not, I would never say that's a bad season when you win a trophy. I think it's about the direction of the club, it's about the progression on the pitch, it's about the plan and where it's going, and I think that's what needs to be put into place. And it does look like that's going to be put off again for another 4 or 5 months, doesn't it? In the sense that it does look like all roads are pointing towards a temporary manager coming in, which I don't disagree with, because if they can get a Ancelotti or a Tuchel at the end of the season, a manager of that ilk or that stature, then you'd wait for them. You would wait for them, and you'd take the risk of having an interim manager who's going to try and get you over the line and get you into Europe for the rest of this season. But they have to make sure that I think they get that type of manager at the end of the season if they're going to wait. Because the risk of obviously putting an interim in is, I mean, look, they've done it twice in the last, whatever it is, 10, 12 years. And it's worked with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, it didn't work with Ranić. So probably why they're talking to Ollie again, probably why they're talking to Michael Carrick, Ruud van Nistelrooy as well as being mentioned. So be interesting to see which one of those they go for. And there'll be a level of emotion with those players coming back in. And I just hope there is some stability towards the end of the season that allows a new manager to come in. Because it's been disappointing. It has. It really has.
OK, well, 2026 lies ahead to cheer them and everybody else up. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you.